Elon Musk, the world's richest man, has accused a US senator from the Democratic Party of being a traitor because this US senator just went to Kyiv and posted his support for the Ukrainian people and not capitulating to Vladimir Putin, which seems to be the current US strategy for ending the Russo-Ukrainian war, at least getting a pause in the fighting. So what does this say about the zeitgeist in the new administration in Washington, D.C., and what does it say about Elon Musk and his allegiances? Привет, my name is Connor Klein, and welcome to Geopolitics with Connor Klein. We are focusing here on the Russo-Ukrainian war, the biggest war in Europe since World War II. I'm an expert in international relations, have been living in Ukraine for many years. I speak Ukrainian and Russian, so I'm here to give you a more nuanced and unique perspective on what is going on with respect to the Russo-Ukrainian war. And we're going to also look a little bit at US politics here, because let me read out this tweet. I'm still going to refer to a tweet, even though it's now called X, the platform. So Senator Mark Kelly, he is a former US Navy pilot and an astronaut, and he is obviously in the upper house of the US legislature. And he posted from the center of Kyiv. I can see where he is in the photo. He is right smack bang in the center. We have St. Michael's Monastery in front of him there. And this is quite a well-known spot in the center of Kyiv, especially nowadays, because they put this display of Russian destroyed material and equipment there, probably sometime in mid-2022. I actually went and filmed there for my lifestyle channel in the center of Kyiv in, I think it was around June 2022. So I filmed in front of this spot, so I know exactly where he is. Quite iconic, I would say, in particular with respect to, obviously, this war. And he tweeted, "Just left Ukraine. What I saw proved to me we can't give up on the Ukrainian people. Everyone wants this war to end, but any agreement has to protect Ukraine's security and can't be a giveaway to Putin. Let me tell you about my trip and why it's important. We stand with Ukraine," right? So quite a strong show of support there. In 2022 and 2023, would this even have been controversial? Not at all, I would say, because the zeitgeist was different. However, Elon Musk took it upon himself to comment under that post and accusing Mark Kelly of being a traitor. Kind of bizarre, since Ukraine and the US are supposed to be allies. But are they really anymore? That is what we will dive a little bit into in this video. So the senator actually had quite a witty response, I think. "Traitor Elon, you don't understand that defending freedom, if you don't understand that defending freedom is a basic tenet of what makes America great and keeps us safe, maybe you should leave it to those of us who do." So Make America Great is obviously part of the slogan of the MAGA movement, Make America Great Again, and defending freedom would have been a basic tenet of that, and in particular the US's alliances, which since World War II have basically been with Europe and other allies in the Pacific region, like Australia, Japan, South Korea. And that doesn't seem to really be the case anymore, does it? If Elon Musk is posting such a provocative statement like accusing a US senator of being a traitor because he went and he showed support to the Ukrainians and said that there can't be a giveaway to Putin. So what is Elon Musk trying to say? That giving Ukraine to Putin is US policy, or should be US foreign policy, to reward a US rival, a country that basically has openly stated for many years that they want to destroy the US. So kind of odd that showing support for the country that is resisting Russian aggression and a Russian invasion to snuff out its independence, whether formally with illegal annexation or just controlling the government by installing a puppet leader, that suddenly things have basically done a 180 since 2022 and 2023. I'm not going to say 2024 because we already had the US aid for Ukraine been held up in the Congress at the behest of Donald Trump and the MAGA, we'll say extremists, because they're more to the extreme side of things, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. She actually have the cap up there, Make Ukraine Great Again, that she ironically created as a kind of diss on Joe Biden, but actually the hats are quite nice. I will show it a little bit more in another video. I bought it from another channel, Ukraine Matters. But anyways, I digress. So back to Elon Musk. Well, Elon Musk, back at the beginning of the 2022 invasion, actually showed a lot of support for Ukraine as was the zeitgeist back then. However, sometime in 2022, there were a few red flags about his allegiances. Starlink, one of Musk's other companies, and I actually made a video about Tesla and the effects of Elon Musk, just in general, not just his policy being pro-Moscow, but his support in general for gutting the government, that is actually almost certainly having a big effect on the sales of Tesla. It's going to cost Tesla billions, especially in Europe with this pro-Kremlin line. In 2022, Ukraine, having resisted the initial invasion to seize Kyiv, then was planning to launch an audacious attack on the Black Sea Fleet stationed in Crimea. Russia illegally occupies Crimea since 2014. You got the main port there, Sevastopol. Actually, Russia legally had a lease there. The lease was to go on. It had been signed again by Yanukovych's government. So it was actually a long-term lease, I think until, I can't remember the date off the top of my head. It was definitely another 20 years at least of a lease on that port legally, although now all those agreements are null and void because of Russia's illegal occupation. And they had Starlink, but Starlink did not extend to Crimea. So they requested that Starlink be turned on for their attack on the Black Sea Fleet. Black Sea Fleet is a legitimate military target. They had actually had the Moskva that the Ukrainians had already sunk, which was its flagship. And at the very beginning of the 2022 invasion, they actually had ships just off the coast of Odessa. Obviously, I spent a lot of time in Odessa, Mama. And they were there basically quite intimidatingly. You could see them just off the coast. There was rumors that they would try an amphibious landing. However, the Ukrainians pushed them already a good bit back. Now they wanted to destroy the Black Sea Fleet when it was in port. And Elon Musk refused to turn on Starlink, saying that it would cause World War III if Ukraine were destroyed the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Now, Elon Musk is a geopolitical moron when he said that, and later on events proved that to be the case because Ukraine has taken out basically much of the Black Sea Fleet. They had to do it slowly over a period of time because Elon Musk wouldn't turn on Starlink for them to just do it in one go. And basically, Russia's had to withdraw most of their Black Sea Fleet to Novorossiysk, the parts of it that haven't been sunk by the Ukrainians. And it is basically not so relevant in this war at the moment. Russia's actually building a port in illegally, well, we could say illegally occupied, but the de facto separatist part of Georgia known as Abkhazia. Russia's actually building a big naval port there, so perhaps they're going to redeploy the Black Sea Fleet eventually down there and then use it to attack Ukraine. Again, we'll just have to see if this war goes on long enough. And that was the first red flag, that Elon Musk was not on Ukraine's side. And of course, this thing, World War III is going to start, which is something you hear constantly as a refrain from Donald Trump, even when he had that undiplomatic spat with Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office about 2 weeks ago. He also said, you're playing with World War III. Anyone who's serious who studies international relations realizes that by not standing up to an aggressive revanchist empire like Russia and showing weakness and trying to appease them, that in effect you're going to get closer to World War III. That is the experience, especially in the lead up to World War II, when Nazi Germany was weaker. Well, Britain and France just basically kept giving him everything he wanted. In fact, they gave him more than he wanted. He was just asking for things kind of willy-nilly, not expecting to be given them, and suddenly they were just giving them to him, and he was like, okay, I guess we got to increase our demands again because they seem to just want to give me everything instead of me having to fight for it. So we have the Sudetenland, which was obviously a part of Czechoslovakia at the time that had a lot of ethnic Germans, so they gave him that. And the promise that he wouldn't expand territorially any further, and of course then he just ignored that and took the rest of Czechoslovakia and eventually invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, in conjunction with the Soviet Union, with the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which were its secret protocols, and how to divide up this kind of, I guess we can call it Eastern Europe, or further east. At the time, everything was further east. Anyways, Germany was further east, Poland was further east, and the Soviet Union's border was actually further east, so it would have included the Baltics. So that is the experience with rewarding an aggressive state, and that is what ultimately will probably lead to World War III, not allowing Ukraine to win in its defensive war, because this is not actually existential for Russia. It is existential perhaps you could argue for the Putin regime, but not for the country. So the thought that they would use nuclear weapons and start attacking the US when they would almost certainly be destroyed, they'd be basically signing their own death warrants and the destruction of their own country, is a little bit ridiculous. And if you're going to give in to that pressure, then they're basically going to keep upping their demands. That's the problem, right? So we had this already first indicator, as I said, red flag about Elon Musk's allegiances. And then around that time, he would have bought Twitter. There are a lot of companies involved with acquisition, and some of them seem to have connections to Russian businessmen. Again, a little bit of a red flag. And later on, he started to text or tweet, I guess we can still call it, post on X, constantly pro-Kremlin talking points or circulating them, and doesn't seem to have any criticism of Vladimir Putin, even though Vladimir Putin is the one who obviously launched this invasion in 2022. So that has been constant. He's also started to back pro-Kremlin political parties, especially in Europe. He was campaigning for the Alternative für Deutschland party, which is, it's considered far right by many parties that are on what I would describe the hard right in Europe. They refuse to collaborate with them politically because they are seen as being toxic as a brand across Europe. They're seen as quite extreme, and basically their policy is to reestablish ties with the Kremlin. They don't really care who gets to control anything further east of Germany, and they want to start buying Russian resources again. This was a huge weakness that Germany had in 2022. They were very dependent on Russian resources, natural resources, and they've weaned themselves off that quite considerably since then. And also you had J.D. Vance and his speech at the Munich Security Conference, where basically he stated that China and Russia are not the main dangers for Europe, but in fact European democracies are, because they won't collaborate with these kind of parties like AfD. And also he complained about the Romanian presidential election, where one of the candidates is now actually, he's been formally banned from running in the new election that's been organized. That is Georgescu, Kalin Georgescu. And basically he is a very openly pro-Kremlin candidate. Whether he should be banned from standing in the election, that's another nuanced debate. I'll deal with that in another video if his ban is upheld by the Romanian courts this week. In any case, we have Musk with Vance. They are very close together. Obviously, J.D. Vance is the US Vice President, and they are basically constantly supporting pro-Kremlin parties and the pro-Kremlin line. And then we have the huge dust-up in the Oval Office. Absolutely disgraceful that this took place in public. I'm sure politicians fight and call each other names in private, but it should never be taking place in public. And Donald Trump even said, this is great TV. It's not the Jerry Springer show. Jerry Springer, if you know, was this kind of shock TV show where they were basically throwing chairs at each other and had all this scandal. It's the United States, the country that normally the president is considered the leader of the free world. I doubt that's really the case in 2025. And definitely the country still has the most relative power in the world. To it to be reduced to the Jerry Springer show almost, I wasn't sure if they're going to actually start throwing punches or throwing chairs at each other next, is absolutely disgraceful that it was allowed to take place. And it's definitely a huge warning to other allies of the United States how they may be treated in public, and basically an attempt to humiliate them. So since then, I've noticed a bit of a trend, not just with this tweet from Elon Musk, where he's accusing a US senator from the opposition party, we'll say, Democratic Party, of being a traitor for just going to Kiev and showing that his support and stating that we can't let Putin win, basically. We can't just give Ukraine to Russia. But he considers that treason. I think a precedent was set in the Oval Office that insulting, I mean, here he's basically insulting a US senator from the opposition party, but this is not again, this is not an isolation. We also had Elon Musk throwing up a Roman salute on the inauguration day. I spoke to people who are MAGA, and they were like, he's a bit autistic. The thing is, it's not in isolation. It's not just one thing he did. If he did one thing, okay, maybe you can find some explanation like autism. But when it's a whole series of statements and actions that point that he is fundamentally pro-Kremlin and anti-Kyiv, anti-Zelensky, anti-European, in fact, with his policies, with his action supporting pro-Kremlin candidates, you have to look at everything in unison. And I think that precedent of insulting leaders and other opposition members to the current White House, I think we've seen a difference in the tone, not just with this tweet, but also in the last few days. Marco Rubio, who's Secretary of State, the US Foreign Minister, and Elon Musk basically got into another spat with the Polish Foreign Minister. Now, Poland is like the US's almost biggest ally, right? I mean, basically, it's hard to find a country in Europe, at least, that's more pro-American. And I mean, we can look at opinion polls, but the US is seen very favorably. A little bit less during Trump's first term, but now it'll be interesting to see what the latest opinion polls are going to say. There's already been a big drop across Europe in support for the US. It's somewhere between 10 and 20 percentage points in most European countries. So I haven't seen the latest polls in Poland, but definitely Poland buying lots of US military equipment. And there was a huge spat over whether Elon Musk would turn off Starlink for Ukraine, because it's actually Poland that technically pays the contract for it. And Radosław Sikorski, the Polish foreign minister, basically stated that they would look for alternatives if Starlink was turned off. And then there was this spat where Elon Musk called Sikorski, remember, foreign minister of a very strong US ally, as a little man. I think he's at least my height. I think he's even taller than me. I'm 178, so about 5'10". I know that Trump and Vance and Elon Musk are taller. I think they were all about 6'1", 6'2", or even taller than that. And maybe Sikorski is not quite as tall. But it was a very demeaning comment to make to, remember, the foreign minister of a US ally. And Elon Musk is not a foreign minister. This is completely out of diplomatic protocol. He should not be making any comments to the Polish foreign minister that are disrespectful. First of all, it shouldn't be disrespectful, even if it was Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio also was, in his tone, quite caustic towards the Polish foreign minister, saying, well, basically, if it weren't for us, Kyiv would have fallen, there would be Russian troops on the Polish border. Of course, Marco Rubio, unfortunately, he's fallen so much in terms of legitimacy and, I guess, his credibility. Poland already has a border with Russia because there's the exclave of Kaliningrad, so actually a part of Russia, which is non-contiguous to the rest, actually borders Poland. So there are already Russian troops on the Polish border, displaying his ignorance. But definitely there has been a precedent set by this new administration that insulting the US's allies, because Poland and the US are still allies, I think, at this point. They're not allies with Ukraine. I think we can say that, the new Trump administration. And Elon Musk, with this statement, is just reinforcing that now, if I were American wearing this t-shirt with Slava Ukrainian on it, he would brand me a traitor. Quite a big statement for the autist, if you want to be generous to him, from South Africa, who is calling former US veterans who go to support a Ukraine ally and don't want to see the country given away to Vladimir Putin. That is the statement. Don't give Ukraine to Vladimir Putin. And that is apparently treason. And that is actually the zeitgeist of MAGA nowadays. It doesn't represent the majority of Americans whatsoever. Basically, at the end of the day, Donald Trump didn't have, I mean, he campaigned to a certain extent on this platform. A lot of people didn't take him seriously. Most people were mainly in America concerned with the economy, which, of course, with Donald Trump taking over and all these tariff wars and inflation is not looking great. Anyways, even on that point, they definitely weren't voting in favor of this pro-Putin foreign policy. And Elon Musk, the masks are off. I mean, he's openly calling a US senator a traitor for supporting Ukraine over Russia. That is the zeitgeist. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, whether this represents US foreign policy now, whether US has actually just switched sides. I would have described it, at least of yesterday, as being that the US is pretending to be neutral, but actually leaning pro-Kremlin with respect to the Russo-Ukrainian war. For what reason? It makes no strategic sense to me, unless they believe that they have more in common ideologically with the Kremlin than they do with their erstwhile European allies, which is a huge departure. It upends 80 years of US foreign policy and actually changes the fundamental nature of what the US is, if that is the case. So I'm going to say it, well, I'm also not American, so I guess I can't be called a traitor. Ireland still supports Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. Horom Slava is the response. It means glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes, and do peremóhy. See you in the next video.